Hi, I'm Dominique Blocker with City TV. Welcome to Inside Santa Barbara, the city's only news magazine show. We bring you up to date on the city's most significant issues, projects, and events. Most likely you've heard of the $787 billion American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. But will any of that money impact your life? In our first story, we find out how some of those funds are going to work for the residents of Santa Barbara. Chances are in the coming months, you will either drive or bike down a city street, use a sidewalk access ramp, or cross the street at a crosswalk using a pedestrian signal. And chances are that you will do so on newly repaired road or at newly installed ramps or using new countdown signals. That's because the city of Santa Barbara is embarking on 3 streets capital improvement projects that will make getting around our town safer and easier, all without costing the city a dime for construction.
In March of 2009, federal government allocated funds to each state, and the funds are disseminated to the local agencies through, in our case, the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. And so our city portion of the funding available to the city of Santa Barbara is approximately $3.77 million.
That's nearly $4 million that the city is able to use on projects that either would have required city funds to complete or would not be completed at all. But using the money did come with some requirements. The city had to identify projects that meet the federal funding requirements.
Local agencies were asked to provide a list of shovel-ready projects. Shovel-ready meaning that it would not take very long for those projects to get approvals to implement those projects, as timing was the essence to create jobs and get the federal money into action. So the city came up with a list of candidate projects.
From that list, 3 projects fit the bill of what they were looking for: pavement maintenance, sidewalk improvements, and infrastructure improvements at intersections. Each of the different project areas impacts the daily lives of residents. We'll take a look at what each entails and how it will enhance our city. But first, let's get right to the numbers. Crosswalk numbers, that is.
With the help of the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, the ERA funding, we have purchased countdown timers to be put at all the other intersections of the city where we currently had just a regular pedestrian head, to have the countdown timer to give pedestrians an idea how long they have across the street.
Being a community that likes to walk, installing the new signals is significant. However, finding the capital funds for this would have been a challenge.
And we have to replace all of our pedestrian heads with the countdown timer within the next few years anyway. And we were going to be struggling trying to find the financial resources to do it. So the ARA funding gave us the ability to get ahead of the game and get these pedestrian heads replaced a lot sooner than if we would have had to do it over a number of years. You know, we're now in the summer season, so our pedestrian numbers are going to increase. So it's really important that the pedestrians know how much time they have to cross the street and they cross safely and responsibly.
The pedestrian timers will be installed over the next several months by city staff as part of their regular maintenance of the traffic signals. And though the 93 crosswalk timers benefit both pedestrians and the city, another beneficiary of the ARA funds is the economy.
In our case, we're buying the material from a company in the United States, and they're located here in California. So we're putting money back into some businesses that might be struggling or aren't selling as many pieces of equipment as they were earlier just because of the recession.
Another project that will help both pedestrians and the economy is the Sidewalk Access Ramp project. Not only will it make getting around easier, but it will replace over 30,000 square feet of city sidewalk.
Through the Access Advisory Committee, we've prioritized corridors for accessibility, and the streets that we've identified are Milpas, Modoc, Coast Village Road, De La Vina, and Gutierrez.
By listening to community feedback and determining where there is the most need, the city will install 59 new access ramps on curbs that currently have no wheeled accessibility.
It's a city standard that we'll be installing at most of the locations. We call it a dual directional ramp.
And though some may not see the curbs as much of a problem, the city knows that for others, having no access ramps can make daily tasks difficult, if not impossible.
I can't tell you how excited the Access Advisory Committee is to hear that in a time when there's not a lot of money at our discretion to fund improvements, that we're able to use $800,000 to fully fund the need that they've identified along these corridors. So it's a huge opportunity for us to complete something that has been on our list for years.
Another opportunity for the city created by the funds deals with quality. The ARA funds mean that city roads can be treated with higher quality pavement treatments.
Without these stimulus funds, it would be a big challenge for us to maintain these roads in a high caliber condition. These stimulus funds give us the opportunity to give us the preferred treatment on the roads, which is the biggest bang for the buck. If the city could afford to do the overlay, we would certainly do that. But because of declining revenues and declining streets capital funds, we haven't been able to afford the premium treatments.
Because quality roads serve a critical function in Santa Barbara, the city has long had a street pavement management program. But with limited funding over the past several years due to revenue shortages and competing priorities, the city has had to stretch their pavement maintenance funding to the limit.
Fortunately, these stimulus funds will be used towards augmenting our pavement management program, and we can do additional slurry seal, cape seal, which is our conventional pavement treatment, but it also gives us the opportunity to do overlay projects, which is a significant improvement to our pavement infrastructure. There are a couple locations in the city that this treatment will be applied. One is Upper State Street and also Upper Delavina Street. So several blocks of city roads will receive a premium pavement treatment, which will improve the infrastructure and will last for many years to come.
The city looked at areas most in need of road work and also chose high traffic areas so that the overlay treatment will have the greatest benefit to the public.
These are areas in the vicinity of businesses, and so for these two locations, we're planning to have our work completed at night to minimize the traffic disruptions to the business and to the residents in the community.
The projects were competitively bid on by and awarded to private companies.
One of the objects of the stimulus funds is to get the money into the economy. And so these private contractors are going to be performing the work. We've also hired specialist consultants for the testing and some of the design work and inspection work that's required to go into these projects. So overall, there's many areas in which those funds will be spent.
Having access to these funds means the city saves its money for other streets capital priorities. Businesses keep jobs and residents have a safer, more enjoyable time getting around, be it by car, bike, or on foot. And at a time when funds are tight, the value is even greater.
All of the projects that are being funded with this Recovery Act are things that we wanted to do if we had the money. And it's just a great opportunity to get them done much sooner than later.
We're able to do things in our capital program this year that we probably wouldn't be able to do for many years. The same thing with the pedestrian timers. It would probably take us 3 to 4 years to install them versus being able to do them in 1 year. So it's a huge benefit to the city as well as the economy.
The pavement project will be completed by the end of the summer, and the access ramp projects will be finished this fall. For more information, visit santabarbaraca.gov/engineering. Usually when something goes to the dogs, it means the situation is getting worse. But City TV's Chris Bell found that's not always the case. Up next, see how the Creeks Division is using dogs in an innovative way to fight water pollution.
Imagine you're Sherlock Holmes and you're hot on the trail of a serial cherry pie thief. You find a trail of cherries, but as you follow that trail, at every corner you have to take a sample and send it to the lab to determine it came from the same pie. The results can take weeks, and by that time the thief, the pie, and the trail could be long gone. That's the predicament City Creeks Division staff have found themselves in when trying to locate the sources of pollution.
We've been working for several years trying to find the sources of pollution in our creeks, what kind of pollution we have, where it's coming from. This, of course, leads us up into the storm drains, and we had high levels of indicator bacteria, which lead to beach warnings being posted. And in order to tackle that, we started working with Dr. Patricia Holden at UCSB, who uses some of the most cutting-edge DNA-based techniques to try and find out if the bacteria are really coming from human waste or animal waste.
But that cutting-edge technology is expensive, and the results take time.
It's really challenging. What we're finding changes in space and time, and it takes us a couple of weeks to get our results back. So we have narrowed in some areas, but it's really hard to find the exact point source.
What the Creeks Division staff needed was an economical testing method that could provide results quickly. Enter Sable and Logan, two former shelter dogs with noses for, well, poop.
We have trained a couple of canines to sniff out environmental contaminants, right now specifically in stormwater. Their targets are human sewage and also detergents in the stormwater system, not just in the enclosed system, but also in the open channels.
Those noses caught the eyes of Murray and UCSB researchers at a recent conference.
I think everyone in the audience was excited about the idea. I don't think there was anyone else in the audience who had been out in the field taking all these manhole samples, trying to get faster results, and the light bulb went off for us that if we had real-time results, we could really hone in on these problems a lot easier.
So Creek staff, along with the researchers, got a grant from the Water Environment Research Foundation to test the accuracy and effectiveness of these sewage-sniffing super sleuths.
We're going to some sites that we've tested before, so we know where we should see a positive response from the dogs or a negative response from the dogs. That helps us know how to use the method when we then go to places that we haven't tested before.
To get an idea of why dogs are so well suited for this work, consider this. The area of scent receptors in a human nose is roughly the size of a postage stamp. For dogs like Sable and Logan, it's the size of a Kleenex tissue.
I always use the beef stew analogy. If you walk into a house and somebody's making beef stew, you might recognize the smell of beef stew. But the dog walks into the room and they can pick out every single ingredient separately and define that within their brain as a recognized smell. And that's really the key to their success in doing this.
The dogs are trained to signal their handler when they detect sewage. For Sable, the signal is a bark. Logan sits down.
Generally what will happen is whoever the client is will have some idea of where they would like us to go and investigate. Depending on if it's an enclosed storm sewer system, we just open up the manholes or the sewer grates and just have the dogs smell from the surface. They don't go into any confined space areas.
If neither dog gives the signal of a positive detection, they move on to the next location. Total testing time, including travel, is minutes compared to days or weeks for the other important but more expensive testing methods. So how did Sable and Logan do?
The dogs are alerting at the places that our DNA results have shown that we have some human waste getting into the storm drain, and they have not alerted at some of the sites where we've had high indicator bacteria levels but no signs of human waste. So far so good.
This cutting-edge work wouldn't be possible without the grant in Measure B, the ballot measure approved by voters in 2000 that directs taxes on hotel visitors to water quality improvement projects.
The Creeks Division and the community of Santa Barbara are really unique in bringing forth funding and community motivation to solve pollution problems ahead of the regulation curve. So we are able to do things that no other municipality in California can do because we have the funding, which gives us resources and seed money to then go right for additional grant money to do this more advanced level of research.
The Creeks Division wants you to know that no matter the testing method, when contaminants are detected, the concentrations are typically very low. At the end of the day, they say the ocean is perfectly safe to swim in.
The report of the results from the dogs' testing will be done in the fall. To learn more about water testing and the Creeks program, go to sbcreeks.org. Water and fire don't mix, as the saying goes, and that's certainly the lesson we've learned after the Zaka fire. It's been 3 years since the massive fire burned much of our back country, yet our water supply is still dealing with its effects.
It was 4th of July fireworks that nobody wanted to see. Sparks from a grinder igniting tinder dry brush northeast of Buellton. 3 months and 240,000 scorched acres later, the Zaka fire would end up being the second largest wildfire in California history. But the effects of the Zaka fire have lasted long after the ashes stopped smoldering. One of the greatest impacts the fire has had is on our water supply. The reason for that is due to the location of the burn area, half of it in the Santa Ynez River watershed.
Gibraltar and Lake Cachuma are both supplied by the Santa Ynez River, and it's really that watershed that is the primary source of drinking water for the South Coast communities.
The initial impacts of the Zaka fire on our water supply came with the first rains, as runoff, laden with tons of ash and debris, made its way into Lake Cachuma and Gibraltar Reservoir.
It washed the mud, debris, and burned stuff into the reservoir and filled up a substantial portion of the reservoir. We lost about 2,000 acre-feet of capacity in the reservoir. And to put that in context, the total demand for water in the city in a given year is about 14,000 acre-feet. So that's a big chunk.
Since Gibraltar Reservoir has slowly been silting up for years, city staff and local water agencies had already made plans to compensate for the drop in capacity.
They worked with the other users on the river and the Cachuma users in order to have an agreement that will let us take water that would have been stored in Gibraltar and allow us to store it in Cachuma instead and have it delivered through the Cachuma works rather than directly from Gibraltar.
Ash and debris, otherwise known as organics in the water, aren't a health hazard in and of themselves, but they do cause problems during the water treatment process. Currently, chlorine is being used to remove the organics from the water at the beginning of the water treatment process. The chlorine takes care of the organics, however, the process also produces unwanted disinfection byproducts.
And the disinfection byproducts are potential carcinogens. So in order to make sure that we were effectively treating the water so that we weren't getting excess amounts of disinfection byproducts, we changed our treatment process at the Cater treatment plant to add powder activated carbon, which allows the organic material to adhere to it, and then we can settle that material out of the water and prevent these disinfection byproducts from forming.
So what happens with all that powdered carbon when it's done doing its job?
At the end of the day, we get sludge. Just essentially everything we put in the water through the treatment process gets removed, and what we're left with in removal, either in the sedimentation basins or the top of the filters during backwash, is the sludge.
Before the Zaka fire, sludge was produced in small enough quantities that it could be dried on-site at the Cater water treatment plant. After the fire and the increase in powdered carbon use, the process had to be changed.
So we had to rent initially a mechanical dewatering machine, which is a filter belt press, and that is the only way that we're able to keep up with the sludge production. So that mechanically dewaters the sludge, and then the material is hauled off to landfill.
The extra chemicals and powdered carbon, along with the disposal of sludge, have driven up water treatment costs significantly, costs that are ultimately borne by ratepayers.
We have absorbed these increased operational costs without making extraordinary changes to rates. We had planned for annual 3.5% rate increases, and we've kept more or less to that plan. However, about $2 million of increased operating costs at Cater had to be absorbed within that plan. Cater treats water not only for the city, but also for Montecito and Carpinteria, so their ratepayers have also seen the impact of the increased water costs because they pay their share of the treatment.
To comply with stricter federal regulations on disinfection byproducts that start in December of 2012, Cater will undergo a major upgrade. That upgrade eliminates the need to use chlorine at the beginning of the treatment process.
We're planning to treat it with ozone when it first comes in, which is a much more effective oxidant, which means that it will more effectively take the precursors, the organic material that causes the disinfection byproducts, out of the water.
Whether from reducing capacity of our storage facilities or from changing the way we treat water, the Zaka fire has had a lasting impact on our water supply and will continue to do so for years to come. Fortunately for water users from Santa Barbara to Carpinteria, we have a diverse water portfolio and a water treatment plant that will provide clean, safe drinking water even longer.
To find out more about the city's water system, Visit santabarbaraca.gov/water or call 564-5460. Everybody knows living in Santa Barbara isn't cheap. In fact, housing costs can make living here a challenge. That's where the City of Santa Barbara's Housing Authority comes in. Valerie Tysander shows us two of its new projects that will get more people into affordable housing.
Yay! The newest Housing Authority project was just completed. These 1- and 2-bedroom units house a combination of seniors, low-income families, and disabled individuals. The newly renovated De La Vina apartments are a testament to the success of the Section 8 housing program in Santa Barbara. Under Section 8, low-income tenants pay 30% of their monthly income towards rent.
I'd probably be living in a house with a whole bunch of other people, because here in Santa Barbara there's a lot of houses, they rent their own rooms out. So one, I don't think I would be independent. Two, I don't think I would have the job that I have right now. And three, I would probably be on welfare. I would probably be having food stamps, and I would probably not have a car, because that's a big plus for me.
Wendy Morgan Daniels says the year before she got involved with the Housing Authority, she lived in 9 different homes.
I mean, it's great. You couldn't ask for anything better. I know I've heard of a lot of horror stories with friends who've had apartments, and like the fridge breaks down or the back door no longer opens, and landlord goes, oh yeah, we'll get to it, and they don't do it. Here at Housing, it's just great. You give them a call, and seriously, within a week, it's done, it's fixed. Everything's taken care of immediately. It gives you such a sound sense of security.
There's another Housing Authority project underway, the Artisan Court Apartments. Artisan Court will provide housing for 3 target groups: formerly homeless, low-income downtown workers, and youth who are too old for foster care.
Right now in our county, we emancipate about 40 youth out of the foster care system, and the studies are showing that about 32% of those end up homeless within 6 months. So we will now be providing housing for this population at affordable rents with programs and services that will lead them to further education and job training such that they can be successful members of our community. The fact that it's a $13 million project in a very tough economy is also an important factor. Artisan Court also received some very competitive bids when we opened our bids for the project, such that the taxpayer is receiving that benefit of low cost to build this affordable public asset, and the local workers, be they construction workers or architects or engineers, are receiving a project upon which they can work, and they definitely need the work right now.
Some people say that affordable housing is not a good idea. They worry that low-income housing could lead to higher crime, graffiti, and the destruction of property.
We have an excellent reputation of being a great property manager with high standards on maintenance. I think nationwide there's been kind of a concern that somehow affordable housing and the low-income folks that normally live there would be a detriment to the community. It always feels good when we can actually create affordable housing by taking existing units that have been let to run down by the private sector and not only provide affordable housing but improve the neighborhood.
To find out more about housing opportunities through the Housing Authority, visit their website at hacsb.org. Well, you might not think of art when you think of airports, but at the Santa Barbara Airport, art is an important part of the flying experience. Channel 18's Jeff Goodvin shows us 2 of their recent projects.
At Molinari, every inch of available space is measured off into panels that street painters will turn into beautiful frescoes, still life pieces, and other artworks using pastels, the pavement, a lot of bending down in the hot sun, and plenty of creativity.
I've been doing this for a good 15 years. Since probably longer than that, actually. I don't know, the early 90s.
The 2010 festival took place on Memorial Day weekend, where street painters diligently worked 3 long days to complete their designs.
For more than 10 years, I believe, the airport has sponsored a street painting square at the Molinari Festival. And each year we've had some pretty dynamic designs by artists, but this year was really very special, and it was very aviation related.
This year, the Santa Barbara Airport's panel was created by Phil Roberts, a commercial artist from LA. His design was a tribute to a great master, a fresco of Leonardo da Vinci flying over Santa Barbara in a man-made contraption.
This is an original piece that I created specifically for the Santa Barbara Airport, and it's Leonardo da Vinci and is one of his flying inventions, and he took a liftoff from Gibraltar above Santa Barbara, and he's flying over the Santa Barbara Basin with the Santa Barbara Mission right below him.
We were just thrilled with it, and the finished product came out even better than his initial design, so we were very, very pleased.
The SBA's involvement in the street painting project reflects the airport's interest in cultivating public art in our community.
Well, we've been working with the Santa Barbara Arts Alliance, which does art programs with at-risk youth, and we have a team of young people that are working on a mural for our construction fence for the new airline terminal, and they're designing kind of giant postcards of an aviation theme, and it's going to be very colorful, and I've been very impressed about the work that the students have been doing.
These Santa Barbara teens are putting up hand-painted panels to cover the chain-link fence that surrounds the new airport terminal construction site.
It adds some interest to the construction area other than just dirt and kind of disruption, and I think it also gives these students an opportunity to have some of their work shown in a very public way.
Well, this particular project came about as a result of the airport wanting to help us out and work with the youth that we've been working with for several years now. The Santa Barbara Arts Alliance has actually been around for, I would say, maybe 3-4 years. And the airport heard about the work that we were doing through the job apprenticeship program through the Parks and Recreation Department. We have a group of youth that are doing something in the community. Let's get them involved, and they gave us a call, and they commissioned the group to come in and do this particular project.
Each panel designed by the teens has a welcome in a different language, created to greet passengers who fly in and out of Santa Barbara.
It's a chance for us to express ourselves by the art we have, and it's a chance that we have to do art, like not being tagged on the streets and like not messing around, you know?
The SBA's involvement in such programs as Youth Art and the Imaginari are indicative of the importance of collaboration between the airport and the arts community. In the future, the airline terminal project will incorporate public art into the design.
We're very interested in arts as it relates to our arts programs and supporting that in the community.
For more updates about the airport, visit flysba.com. Well, that does it for this month's episode of Inside Santa Barbara. If you have any questions or comments about the show, give us a call at City TV at 564-5311. You can also watch the show online at citytv18.com. I'm your host, Dominique Blocker. Remember to get involved inside Santa Barbara.